Have you ever thought to yourself, what am I eating? Like really, what's in this food that I'm eating? If you haven't, you're about to start thinking about it. And if you have, then all of your suspicions may be right. Today we're talking about Joseph Roy Metheny. Some people called him Joe, and he was born March 2nd, 1955 in Baltimore, Maryland. He was one of 6 children from his mother, Jean Metheny, but you can't find his father's name anywhere. His father is unnamed, and I don't know how that happened, but his father was a laborer but an alcoholic who was killed in a car accident when Joseph was just 6 years old. That left Jean as a single parent, where she had to work double shifts in multiple jobs to take care of her 6 kids. She works as a food truck driver, a bartender, and a waitress. Joseph claims he was neglected growing up. He said he was sent to different family members and lived in what was called foster-like arrangements, just hopping around to different family members. But Joseph's mom says if he was neglected, it was his own fault. She claims it was a pretty good home and that she provided for all of her children and they had a normal family life. She says her kids never went hungry or been put into homes with other family members. She said that's a lie. To put in my little 2 cents, I think that it could be something in the middle. I mean, she was working 3 jobs and double shifts. It could just be his perspective of everything as a kid growing up. They just maybe have a different view on the situation. Who knows? Jean described her son Joseph as a loving child. She said Joseph was an above average student, always polite and not mean as a child. She claims Joseph was smart and had a good childhood. So then where did it all go wrong? Joseph joined the army in 1973 when he was 18 years old. His mother said he served in Germany, although he claimed he served in Vietnam. His mother said she had no recollection of him serving in Vietnam. But also, here is where their stories don't match up again. First, about him being neglected, and now whether or not he served in Vietnam. Jean did admit, though, to not speaking to him for over 10 years, so they really didn't know what was going on in each other's lives. So I don't know why she was speaking on it, really. She said, quote, "He just kept drifting further and further away. I think the worst thing that ever happened to him was drugs. It's a sad, sad story," unquote. When Joe was in the army, he got addicted to heroin. And even after the army, he continued to abuse drugs and alcohol. He was getting in trouble with the law and he was arrested for disorderly conduct. He had been spending a lot of time in bars and living with homeless men in makeshift camps. And he kept spending almost all of his money on all these drugs that I can't keep saying on here or I'll get in trouble with YouTube. But, crack, cocaine, heroin, all of that, and alcohol. So when I say drugs, you know what I'm talking about. So even though he was doing all that, taking all them drugs, he was still able to keep a steady job. After leaving the military, Joseph worked at a sawmill and as a truck driver. And still, even up until that day, people still described him as intelligent, well-spoken, and very well-mannered. They will have you fooled, won't they? He meets this woman, and I can't find her name anywhere either. But they end up getting married. Joseph was telling everybody that she also had a drug problem, and they were doing drugs together. She eventually got pregnant, and they had a son. In 1994, Joseph still had his job as a truck driver. And with that type of job, you're always gone. You're never at home. You just be out there driving everywhere. And it's so ironic that Joe had a job where he was never at home and his mother was always gone too, and he was complaining about that. And around this whole time, his son was 6 years old. So when Joseph came home from driving trucks, he opens the door and he sees nothing. She gone, the baby gone, everything gone. The house was wiped out. Wasn't nothing in the house. He was livid and enraged. He wanted revenge. So he went out there to find where she was at. He started going around town looking for her. He was going to all the dope spots, drug houses, and holes, just looking through all the nicks and crannies he could find, looking for his wife and his son. He came across some people that told him she was living with this other guy at such and such bridge over there in South Baltimore. The guy she left him for was an addict too. And it's said that the guy that she left Joseph for had her out there prostituting to make money. And since they cleaned out the house, I'm thinking they sold all the stuff and smoked it up and whatnot, because what would they do with it living under a bridge? Where they gonna put it all? How they gonna plug up the TV? Joseph gets to this bridge where he thinks his wife could be at, and this is where he sees these two homeless men, Randall Brewer and Randy Piker. Joe asked them, "Have you seen my wife?" But the two men told him they didn't know her. Who is that? That's when he gets mad because they don't know who she is, and he unalives them both with an axe that he brought with him. And at that same time, there was a fisherman over there who saw Joe unalive these two men. So what did Joe do? He chased this man down and he unalived him too with this metal bar that he found. And then after he got done unaliving him, he threw him and the other two men that he just unalived in the river. The bodies were found August 2nd, 1995. Joe was arrested 2 weeks after, but just for the homeless men. He spent a year and 9 months in jail waiting to go to trial for this. He was on trial for 1 week before a jury concluded in July of 1996 that there was insufficient evidence to convict Joe of murdering Randy and Randall, because at that same time, a whole bunch of homeless people was just out there unaliving each other. So they're saying they couldn't really pinpoint anything on anyone. But then Joseph later said that, yeah, I did unalive those two homeless men, but he was just able to get away with that. After he was released from jail for those two murders, that's when he found out what happened to his son. He found out that his son was in foster care because his wife was arrested and then released at some point. So he was like, okay, cool. She's still out there. I would go find her and that man she left me for. Let's go back a little bit, because that same night he unalived Randy and Randall, he took a woman who was an addict down by the bridge. He lured her there with some CRACK. They started smoking and he asked her, "Have you seen my wife?" When she tells him, "I don't know who your wife is. I never seen her." That's when he gets mad because she don't know who his wife is. That's when he R-worded her, strangled her, unalived her, and threw her body in the bushes. Just a few hours later, he brings another woman down there by that same bridge, and he did to her what he just did to the other woman. They got high, he R-worded her, strangled her, and unalived her. Then he put her in the lake. He went and got the girl that he put in the bushes out the bushes and put her in the lake too. And he put rocks on top of them to weigh them down so they wouldn't come up. He admitted to killing 5 people within 7 hours that day. Police said he had chosen young white prostitutes who were addicted to drugs as his victims. The killings were all brutal sexual assaults. Joseph was later arrested for unaliving 28-year-old Tony Lynn Inglesia. When he found her, he strangled her, stabbed her, and R-worded her. Her body was found near some pallets at his job. The case was thrown out because, again, there was not enough evidence somehow. He unalived multiple prostitutes, and he started bringing the bodies to his home. There is where he would dismember them, and he stored the meatiest parts of them in Tupperware containers. Again, the meatiest parts. So I guess wherever they had the most weight at or something. I don't know. But whatever didn't fit in his freezer, he buried in a truck lot owned by the pallet company he worked at. One of the first prostitutes he dismembered and had people eat was Kathy Ann Magaziner, who was 39 years old. He chopped her up, and whatever he didn't use of her, he put the rest in a shallow grave, and she was buried there for 2 years. But it said that 6 months later, he went back and dug her skull up and had sex with the skull. Then after he got done doing what he was doing to it, he got rid of it. Now, what got into his mind that made him think, oh, let me go outside, dig her up, and do that to the skull? One day, he tasted the human meat by mixing it with pork and beef. When he cooked it and ate it, he was like, oh, yeah, this tastes good. He said it tastes the same. Can't even tell the difference. So over the next several weekends, because he would sell this human meat every weekend, he mixed the prostitute's flesh with the beef and pork, forming it into neat little patties. He would sell these meat patties out of a small barbecue stand he opened on the side of the road, just outside of his job. So he had people at his job eating this too. All them people working on that truck site, and then just passerbyers, anybody that was just driving by, walking by. They was eating on human meat. They didn't even know. Whenever he needed more of this special meat, he would just go out there and get him another prostitute and bring it back to the house and chop him up. He had to have grinded them up some kind of way, because how do you make meat patties if he didn't grind them up? Oh my God. He later told police he received no complaints on the meat tasting funny. He said, in fact, no one seemed to notice that his burgers had a little something extra in them. He said, and I quote, "The human body tastes very similar to pork. If you mix it together, no one can tell the difference. So the next time you're riding down the road and you happen to see an open pit beef stand that you've never seen before, make sure you think about this story before you take a bite of that sandwich." Unquote. He did the same thing with Kimberly Lynn Spicer. This is a picture of her here. He strangled her, R-worded her, then he chopped her up and put her in Tupperware and stored what he didn't need of her in the freezer. He kidnapped Rita Kemper and he took her back to his trailer. They got high and she refused to have sex with him. Then that's when she ran out of the trailer. When she did that, he chased her down, beat her, and dragged her back into the trailer. He pulled her pants down and attempted to R-word her. Rita said he attempted to murder me. She said Joe said, "I'm going to kill you and bury you in the woods with the other girls." And while he was getting ready to dismember her, she played dead and was able to escape out of the trailer window. That's when she was able to run to police. He just knew that was it for him after that. So he just went outside, sat in front of his trailer, and waited for police to come. They arrest him, and when he gets back to the station, he admits to everything. He never showed any remorse for the crimes he committed. He said the only thing he regrets is that he was never able to kill his wife and the man she ran off with. Joseph said, "I kill because I enjoy it." He even said, "I am a very sick person." What they say step one is acceptance. At least he is self-aware. And so because he was living at his job in the back in that trailer, the owner of the business let Joseph live in the back of the job in that trailer, because after Joseph was released from jail, after unaliving those two homeless men, he went to his boss saying, "I don't have anywhere to live. Can I live in the back?" And his boss agreed to it. So since his boss agreed to this, he was arrested and charged with being an accessory for disposing of evidence. So for sure, they have to be talking about Kathy, the one that he dug back up and had sex with the skull. But the owner didn't know what was going on. He over there getting arrested because Joseph wanted to sell human meat patties. Joseph did lead police to Kathy's shallow grave. When they found her, part of her skull was missing. So maybe the part that was missing is the part that he, had sex with. And they were able to identify her by her dental records. And this is him right here showing police where all his graves are. And this woman right here is another one of his victims. I'm just not sure which one. Joseph got 50 years for unaliving Rita. They were only able to prove he unalived 2 people out of everyone he unalived. He admitted to unaliving 13 people. When he first went to court, they gave him the death penalty, which is what he wanted, but then they went back to court and he was charged with 2 life sentences, which is what he didn't want. So on August 5th, 2017, Joseph was found dead at the age of 62 in his prison cell at the Western Correctional Institution in Cumberland, Maryland. They didn't know exactly how he died, but they claimed that there was no foul play involved. So with that being said, I will not be eating at any makeshift food stands. Even if they seem legit, I'm going to think about this story. Like he said, think about this story before you take a bite. Let me know what you think about that and this whole case down in the comments so we can talk about it. And if you haven't already and want to see more videos like this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next one.